Gregory Miles was a tech billionaire with a flawless public image. His daughter Lila was the brilliant, beloved teenager everyone admired until she was found dead at the bottom of their grand staircase. As investigators peeled back layers of luxury, a disturbing portrait of control, secrets, and obsession emerged. What looked like a tragic accident soon unraveled into a cold, calculated plan. The man who built an empire may have destroyed his own blood to protect it. To the outside world, Gregory Miles was the embodiment of success. As a self-made tech mogul with a charming smile and a calm demeanor. He had become a familiar face in business magazines and high-profile charity galas. His estate, nestled in the serene hills of upstate New York, was a masterpiece of modern architecture, complete with manicured gardens, a private cinema, and state-of-the-art security. Neighbors described the Miles family as quiet, polite, and intensely private. At the heart of this pristine world was his only daughter, Lila Miles, a 17-year-old who appeared to have inherited her father's brilliance and composure. Lila was often featured on her school's honor roll board and regularly posted polished piano covers on social media that attracted thousands of followers. She was elegant, intelligent, and always smiling, a reflection of the life she lived. From lavish birthday parties to European vacations, her online presence painted a portrait of a teenager living in a dream. Gregory was frequently seen by her side in family photos, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder, always captioned with phrases like "proud dad" and "my little genius." No one suspected that anything could be amiss in a household so orderly, so enviable. Then came that cold, gray November morning. The local police received a 911 call from Gregory just before 6 a.m. His voice, reportedly strained and trembling, described finding his daughter unresponsive at the bottom of the main staircase. First responders arrived within minutes. Lila's body lay motionless on the marble floor, her head turned unnaturally to the side. She was still wearing her bedtime clothes, a soft blue robe and slipper socks. Gregory claimed he had last seen her the previous evening around 10 p.m., and that she had gone to bed early after complaining of a headache. The initial police report suggested an accidental fall. There were no immediate signs of a struggle, no broken objects, and no evidence of a break-in. The staircase, wide and grand, featured low steps and a thick mahogany railing. It was difficult to imagine someone slipping fatally on such a structure, but not impossible. The coroner's preliminary findings aligned with Gregory. Statement: blunt force trauma to the skull consistent with a fall. Gregory was described as devastated, his eyes red and sunken, speaking softly as he gave officers a walkthrough of the previous night. As news spread, an outpouring of support came from all corners. Classmates lit candles on Lila's school campus. Social media filled with memorials and tribute videos. Gregory, though reserved, attended a brief vigil outside the estate gates, standing alone under a black umbrella, his face unreadable. To everyone watching, it was a tragic accident, a freak moment that stole a young life too soon. But as the days passed and the initial shock began to fade, quiet questions began to emerge. Some details didn't quite add up, and behind the scenes, authorities began to dig deeper. What they would eventually uncover was something far more chilling than a simple misstep. As investigators looked closer into the circumstances surrounding Lila Miles' death, what began as a tragic accident began to shift into something more complex and disturbing. The family's polished image, once considered a symbol of success and elegance, started to show subtle cracks. While Gregory continued to maintain a public front of mourning and cooperation, investigators were quietly gathering inconsistencies in his timeline and statements. The first red flag came from Lila's school counselor, who reached out anonymously. According to the counselor, Lila had recently expressed intense emotional distress. She mentioned feeling suffocated at home and had requested help transferring to a boarding school out of state. Though the request had not been formalized, the timing was significant. Just 3 weeks before her death. The counselor's notes revealed phrases like controlling environment, always being watched, and fear of disappointing him. These weren't concerns typically associated with a happy, well-adjusted teen from a loving home. Detectives obtained a warrant to examine Lila's bedroom. Beneath her neatly arranged possessions, they discovered a false panel in the back of her closet. Inside it was a small box containing handwritten journal pages and printed screenshots of conversations from a private messaging app. The diary entries painted a much darker picture of her home life. Lila had documented being monitored through security cameras throughout the house. She noted specific times when her devices would lose access to the internet or certain websites, suggesting digital control. She also described how she was rarely left alone for more than a few minutes without Gregory checking in. The printed screenshots revealed conversations between Lila and an unknown individual saved under a coded username. The messages were emotional and desperate. She spoke of her plans to run away, of being afraid to confront her father, her fears that if she tried to leave, something bad would happen. The final message, dated the night before her death, simply read, "If I don't text tomorrow, you'll know why." While this alone didn't prove foul play, it significantly shifted the tone of the investigation. Further scrutiny of Gregory's financial records showed he had withdrawn several large sums of cash in the weeks before Lila's death. When asked, Gregory explained the withdrawals as payments toward a private real estate deal, but no property transaction could be traced. The unaccounted funds raised suspicion, especially when paired with the discovery of a recently updated life insurance policy on Lila, listing Gregory as the sole beneficiary. Even more unsettling was the autopsy report. While the initial conclusion supported the fall theory, further analysis by an independent forensic pathologist highlighted inconsistencies. The location and shape of the head injury suggested a side impact, the kind unlikely to result from a backward stumble downstairs. The pattern of bruising on her arms also indicated she may have been grabbed or restrained before death. At this point, the accidental fall narrative no longer held up. The deeper investigators looked, the more they began to question not just what happened that night, but what kind of life Lila had really been living behind the closed doors of the Miles estate. With growing doubts and evidence pointing away from a simple accident, the investigation into Lila Miles' death accelerated. Authorities focused their attention on the one person who had been alone with her on the night she died, her father, Gregory Miles. Public opinion, once sympathetic, started to shift as local media picked up the whispers of inconsistencies and dark suspicions. Gregory, once a beloved public figure, began avoiding the press entirely, his previously open demeanor replaced with guarded silence. A breakthrough came when cybercrime specialists recovered partial surveillance footage from the home's internal security system. Most of the data from the night of Lila's death had been wiped clean. An unusual event, considering Gregory's estate operated on a cloud-based security platform with multiple redundant backups. The deletion appeared deliberate. However, fragments of corrupted footage were pieced together from a backup drive found in the security room. What those fragments revealed raised immediate alarm. One clip, time-stamped 11:47 p.m., showed Gregory entering Lila's bedroom. He was wearing the same clothing he had on when first responders arrived the next morning. The next visible clip didn't show him leaving her room until 12:38 a.m., nearly an hour later. This directly contradicted his statement that he had gone to bed by 10 p.m. and hadn't seen Lila again after dinner. When questioned, Gregory offered a new explanation, saying he had gone to check on her after hearing unusual noises. But the hallway audio, though low quality, captured no such disturbances. More troubling details emerged from the forensic team. Traces of diluted blood were discovered behind the lower staircase railing. Someone had attempted to clean the area with a commercial-grade disinfectant. It hadn't been visible to the naked eye, but showed up clearly under luminol. Experts determined that the blood spatter pattern did not align with a fall, but rather suggested impact while standing. Authorities also learned that 6 months prior, Gregory had taken out a high-value life insurance policy on Lila, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. The policy payout, a staggering $5 million, specifically included clauses for accidental death caused by blunt force trauma. The timing was suspicious, as it came shortly after Lila began expressing distress to school staff and searching online for out-of-state boarding schools. In an attempt to counter these discoveries, Gregory's legal team suggested the possibility of a home intruder and released a public statement, claiming that Lila may have had a secret stalker. Yet no physical evidence supported this theory. The security system had logged no entries or exits beyond Gregory's movements that night. No footprints, no unfamiliar DNA, no sign of forced entry. As the investigation continued, the once solid story Gregory had crafted began to unravel. What had started as a tragic accident now appeared to be something far more sinister. Carefully staged, scene designed to mask a violent truth. With every new detail, the spotlight focused tighter on Gregory, illuminating the dark corners of a life that had for so long hidden behind wealth and charm. As suspicion around Gregory Miles intensified, investigators began to examine every inch of the family estate and all possible sources of information. While Gregory maintained his innocence, insisting that his daughter's death was either an accident or caused by an unknown intruder, the evidence was steadily painting a different picture. Then came a discovery that no one expected, one that didn't come from a surveillance system or a forensic lab, but from a creature who had silently witnessed everything. The family's pet parrot, Charlie, had always been a background fixture in the Miles household. Lila had adored him, often chatting to him while alone in her room. He had been trained to mimic basic phrases like, "Hello, good night, and I love you." But after Lila's death, Charlie began to repeat new and unsettling phrases, seemingly out of nowhere. One of the officers assigned to monitor the estate during the investigation heard the parrot utter, "Stop, please don't," followed by, "I won't tell anyone." The words were spoken in a high, trembling voice eerily similar to Lila's. At first, investigators dismissed the behavior as coincidental mimicry. But as Charlie repeated the phrases at increasingly specific intervals, often at night, when the house was quiet, it became harder to ignore. Experts were brought in to evaluate the bird's behavior. They confirmed that parrots often replicate emotional outbursts and stressed that the repetition of these particular phrases was not only unusual, but also significant, considering Charlie's close bond with Lila. While not admissible as direct evidence in court, recordings of the bird's words were considered a behavioral indicator, offering insight into what may have occurred the night Lila died. Meanwhile, a deeper dive into the family's digital history revealed more troubling signs. Gregory's home server contained previously hidden files labeled with obscure names. Within them were monitoring logs from an app installed secretly on Lila's phone, tracking her texts, call history, and even GPS location. The timestamp showed the app was activated every evening and deactivated each morning. This confirmed Lila's diary entries about being constantly monitored. Neighbors, when re-interviewed, also came forward with information that hadn't been included in the original report. One elderly neighbor recalled hearing a loud thud late that night, followed by what she described as muffled arguing. She hadn't reported it at the time, assuming it was a family disagreement. Another neighbor mentioned seeing Gregory burning papers in the backyard fire pit the day after Lila's death, an odd action. Given the freezing temperatures and the fact that the house had a working fireplace inside, by now, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The missing footage, the altered scene, the life insurance, the suspicious digital activity, and now even the parrot's mimicked cries all pointed toward a single conclusion. Gregory's carefully controlled world was collapsing. The story of a grieving father was falling apart under the weight of mounting evidence, replaced by the chilling possibility that he had been orchestrating more than just a cover-up. As the trial of Gregory Miles commenced, the nation watched with morbid fascination. The courtroom was packed with journalists, true crime enthusiasts, and residents from the quiet town who once regarded Gregory as a symbol of affluence and grace. His legal team attempted to maintain the image of a devastated father, wrongly accused. But the prosecution had built a devastating case, brick by brick. What had started as a presumed household accident had now unraveled into one of the most shocking stories of familial betrayal in recent memory. The prosecution began by presenting the forensic evidence. Blood traces hidden beneath a fresh coat of wax on the staircase, the bruising on Lila's arms inconsistent with a fall, and the absence of fingerprints on the banister all suggested a scene that had been cleaned and staged. The partial surveillance footage showing Gregory entering Lila's room late that night, combined with the nearly hour-long gap before he exited, formed a crucial piece of the timeline. The deleted files and the failed attempt to erase the security logs revealed clear intent to conceal actions, not random technical failure. The court listened intently as experts explained the digital trail Gregory had left behind, the secret monitoring software on Lila's phone, the controlling messages discovered on her devices, and the surveillance logs from within the house painted a haunting picture of obsession and control. More than just a father managing a teenager, Gregory appeared to be manipulating every facet of Lila's life. Then came the life insurance policy recently updated, unusually high in value and written with disturbing specificity. It was a financial incentive layered over emotional domination. But the most powerful moment came when the prosecution introduced an unexpected witness. A former housemaid, who had worked for the Miles family 2 years prior, returned from abroad upon hearing about the case. She presented a sealed letter Lila had secretly handed her the day before the maid was suddenly dismissed. The letter, authenticated by handwriting experts, was Lila's plea for help. In it, she wrote about being isolated, about the fear she felt around her father, and her desperation to escape. She ended the note with the words, "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident." The defense scrambled to discredit the maid's motives and questioned the timing of her return, but the damage was already done. The jury had heard enough. After only 6 hours of deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Gregory Miles showed no emotion as the verdict was read. The man who once smiled for magazine covers now stood silent and hollow, surrounded by flashing cameras and stunned onlookers. In the aftermath, Lila's story became a symbol. Schools across the country began implementing stronger emotional wellness programs, and laws were proposed to tighten the rules around digital surveillance within families. The Miles mansion, once a monument to wealth and influence, stood abandoned, its windows dark and empty. A quiet memorial cross was placed at the base of the staircase inside, marking not just the place where a young life ended, but where the truth, buried under layers of perfection, finally came to light.